Good evening everyone and welcome to another discussion video. This one is on Outgrowing God by famed evolutionary biologist and atheist Richard Dawkins. It's meant as a version of the God delusion aimed more towards teenagers, but it can also serve as a good Dawkins 101 introduction book since it deals with topics that, historically speaking, Dawkins has been most vocal about. It doesn't just discuss theology, it also discusses evolution when it talks about complexity and how complexity can arise from initial simple conditions and rules. One of the most interesting aspects of this book is when it attempts to look at how religion and superstition could have originated. People like Brett Weinstein have discussed religion as something that can be evolutionarily beneficial to humans in the sense that it provides a sense of community and shared culture among a people. While I do think that a sense of community is definitely part of the equation, I think the full answer is much more complicated than that, and Dawkins provides a plausible one in his book. Imagine yourself nomadically moving through the savannah. You hear a rustling noise behind you. If you don't think anything of this noise, then you won't live long if the noise ends up being a lion. However, if you believe the noise is a potential threat and always act like it could be a potential threat, then the likelihood that you would survive is always going to be greater than it would be if you were to just ignore the noise. However, one would have to develop a balance between always believing it's a potential threat and never believing it's a potential threat, as the latter will cause you to miss out on important things that you could be paying attention to. Another variable to the equation is the fact that humans have a knack for believing in agents. Think of an agent as something that does something for a purpose. A lion would be an agent since it has a purpose and its purpose is to eat you, whereas the wind is not an agent because it has no purpose. It's just reacting by the laws of nature. The wind also can't willingly modify its behavior, whereas a lion can. Because it was evolutionarily beneficial to believe that an agent was behind the rustling grass behind you, we now have a tendency to see agents where there are none, to believe in falsehoods. Children, for instance, are scared of the boogeyman, and adults can be scared of the dark. You hear some strange noise at night while you're lying in bed, and instead of rationalizing the noise and coming to the conclusion that it's overwhelmingly unlikely that it's not something benign, you jump to the conclusion that it's probably a demon, or a ghost, or a burglar, something that's going to harm you. We have a bias towards seeing agents, and taking a gander at our ancestors, you'll see the high level of agency that they would see around them. They believed in an agent for just about anything you could think of. They believed in rain gods, in sun gods, river gods, God for pretty much anything you could think of. What's also interesting is that humans are not the only species to develop superstitious behaviors. Studies done on pigeons show that pigeons also develop superstitious tendencies based on patterns that they think exist that actually don't. In a nutshell, 8 pigeons were placed in separate boxes with a mechanism that would feed them at random intervals. 6 of the 8 pigeons developed a belief that it was something specifically that they were doing that was causing for the mechanism to dispense food. What must have had happened was that the feeding apparatus must have been activated at the same time that the bird was exhibiting these movements, and so the birds were under the impression that it was their movements that were causing the feeding apparatus to be activated. Even though their movements clearly were not working anymore, they continued to move in the same way. There are other evolutionary explanations for religion discussed in the book, but for the sake of not spoiling it, I'll stop there. Overall, it's a nice introduction to Dawkins' work and a pretty easy read that you could get through in one day. It's a pretty short book. It's small, and I think it only has maybe around 260 some odd pages. Anyways, that's all for now. Next time I'll be discussing Yasmin Mohammed's book, Unveiled, so stay tuned for that. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.